Islam. Peace. Hotep. Greetings. Yesterday we did the class um, dealing with the debate that we were supposed to have with somebody, and at the last minute they canceled. But there were questions that they asked that they wanted answered for the debate. So yesterday's class we basically answered those questions. Right? In answering those questions, today somebody else, right? Mind you, the interaction that we have with these people isn't like personal. It's only on the media, on the internet, right? So today, another brother, another more, posted a blog about a 7-page blog, right? 7-page blog, basically disproving everything that we presented yesterday, right? Um, from what is apparent, from what people are able to see, right? If they don't have, like what you're talking about, the background information about what this is and how it came about and how we ended up where we are today in this, right? People would look at that individual and myself based on our attire and just think that we're relative, when it doesn't go like that, because there was a sellout after 1929. There was a sellout with regard to what the liberation of quote unquote black people is going to be, right? Prior to 1930, majority of organizations that were for the liberation of black people were civic minded in their approach. Their approach wasn't we were a slave, so we need to get some payback, or their approach was we need unification amongst these how many ever million of us that look the same. And the best way for us to do that is through nationhood, right? Because that's what everybody else was doing. Everybody else's concepts of how they live is based on a nation that they come from, and that nation having what they would say are national principles attached to them, right? And that's what it is, right? Between 1913 and 1929, there was civic activity by a man by the name of Noble Drew Ali that was, his message to people was, you're not Negro, black, colored, or Ethiopian, because those names were given to slaves by slaveholders in 1779 and lasted until 1865 during the time of slavery. But this is a new era of time, and all men, which includes women, right, must proclaim their free national name in order to be recognized by the nations of the world, right? So that the lion and the lamb may sit down together in the hills, and there will be peace on earth and nobody will be harmed. Just by doing that only, proclaiming your nationality. So this is what Noble Drew Ali taught, that you have to get out of the mind frame of being a slave and get into the mind frame of being a national. And once you think national, you act national.
So how do we do that?
So he set up an institution called the Moorish Divine and National Movement, right? And this movement was broken up into sections. And one section was called the Old Canaanite Temple, and that was the beginning. And the purpose of that was civic activity, to bring people out of the mind state that you're not Negro, black, colored, you're Aboriginal, Indigenous, Moors. After the activity of the Old Canaanite Temple, there was another branch called the Moorish Holy Temple of Science, or the Moorish Temple of Science, right? And that institution was also civic in nature, right? And carried on the exact same work that the Old Canaanite Temple carried on from 1913, right? After the Moorish Holy Temple of Science, the Moorish Science Temple of America came into play, right? Now all of this is documented in Noble Drew Ali's work called The Moorish Literature, right? Now yesterday we were talking about quotes from Noble Drew Ali, right? And where the quotes come from. And the brother in his blog was saying that me showing these books is wrong because, let me find this thing where it says it. Okay, so statement 18. So he had 7 pages and 23 statements in this blog.
Who wrote the blog?
Prince Saadi L. PrinceSaadil. And the name of the blog is What Are the So-Called Canaanland Moors Teaching? Right? So this was statement 18. Canaanland. Cananland. Moors. Teacher. Because he's basically saying that all our teachers are wrong, that we put out in that video yesterday, right? And what this video today is to show that it's about perspective, and that there are different perspectives in this Moorish movement, and there's no one superior perspective, but there are perspectives that bring you to a higher level of being yourself, right? So statement 18, where did the Prophet write a book called Moorish Literature? And the quote you are quoting is not from Moorish Literature book. It is from the Oral Statements, another document. You don't even know what works you are quoting, right? Now, the book that I didn't show yesterday is this book, which is called Oral Statements and Prophecies of Noble Drew Ali, right? And this is the book that he's talking about the quotes, that I don't know where the quotes came from. This is the book where the quotes came from, right?
But he doesn't know where the quotes came from?
No, he's saying that where I said the quotes came from,
It doesn't come from there.
it doesn't come from there, right? But I'm going to prove, because he's saying that it came from where I said it came from, right?
He said it came from where you said it came from.
He's saying that it came from this document,
Right.
called Oral Statements and Prophecies of Noble Drew Ali, right? I said that it came from the Moorish literature. And he's saying that the Moorish literature and the oral statements are 2 separate books, which they are. There's no dispute in that, right? And half of our discussion yesterday was about idiotic disputes amongst people who should know better.
Exactly.
right? Now he's gonna go write this blog, 7 pages. He's supposed to be so-called adept and he knows something and he has books out and he's whatever, but he's on Facebook writing up, miseducating people, right? And education, right? Illiteracy is a product of education. And if you read the blog, you'll see that he's illiterate because he can't spell. Lots of misspellings. It looks like I'm reading some slave narrative. What I'm reading, right? So this.
He should have checked that with someone before he went.
No, well, this is the thing, because we're gonna get deep into this, right? So you could understand that when people say, well, not even when people say, let me be specific. When active Moors who teach the civic perspective of what Noble Drew Ali brought, right? Things that they say are going to go over people's head because people haven't been taught anything about civics at all. All they've been taught about with regard to Noble Drew Ali is religion and pray and Qurans and Muhammad and right, when that's not what it's about for the salvation of our people, because we already tried religion and obviously religion didn't do anything to help any of us, and not just us, anybody in any other nation. So if you ask anybody in another nation about their religion, their religious history is bathed in blood. That they're the saved ones, and the other person that is of a diverse religion is a heathen. Right?
This is what bothers me. I always seem to run into this problem. We never can become one. Right. It's always this going this direction, this direction.
And why? Because in nature there has to be balance. So there's going to be disagreeable beings and there's going to be agreeable beings. The problem is that the disagreeable beings don't want nothing to do with the agreeable beings, but the agreeable beings want to pretend like the disagreeable beings could be brought over onto the agreeable side. Right? Same thing that we're dealing with right now, why we're even having this class. Right? So this book right here, called Oral Statements, has quotes that Noble Drew Ali said that were documented just in order to preserve his legacy. Because there was a sellout, they eliminated him, assassinated him, and wanted to get all of his literature out of circulation. And some people who were sincere and faithful to Noble Drew Ali and what he brought, they hoarded stuff. They hid things. They were like the Moors in Spain when the Inquisition came and they told them convert to Christianity or die. And Moors said, okay, fine, y'all convert, but when they're home, they're in the basement propagating Islam. Right? So when we say, when he makes the statement that where did the Prophet write a book called Moorish Literature, and the quote that you are quoting is not from the Moorish Literature book, right? It's because the book that I was quoting was Noble Drew Ali, the Last Prophet. His prophecies and hadiths, which is oral statements, which means oral statements, right? And Moorish literature proclamations. So this is a book that he's not privy to, because his dad, who has a fez just like this, has issues with the person who put this book up. And this book is a compilation of this book and the other book called Moorish Literature, that are two separate books. But this brother took it on himself to put the information together and to make it accessible to the people so they can have this and they don't have to jump through hoops to try to get this from the people who are hoarding it. Yes.
Okay.
Right? Nothing's wrong with that. He didn't change anything. He didn't add anything. All he did was say, you know what?
Make it simple.
Let me make it simple and make the information of Noble Drew Ali accessible to the people, because that's what the job of Moors is, right? So when I made the quote yesterday, I was quoting from this book, right? Because I support the elder that put this out, because he's been an active Moor and he's been battling dirty Moors for many years. And dirty Moors are Moors like this Moor that's going to write this blog, right, to try to undermine what Canaanland Moors are doing in order to try to help people get out of this madness that they're in, right? And the only reason that, like, these, for example, this is 18, right? This is page 5, okay? So if this is going to be a point that he's trying to make, to say that we're not doing our job properly, right? And that could be dealt with so easy.
Why didn't you come face to face and sort it out instead of going on the blogging?
Because the other part of what we were talking about yesterday is this document called King Alfred Plan, right? Now, King Alfred Plan is the executive order that was authorized 1969 to counteract the minority called blacks, Indians, Latinos, Puerto Ricans, and poor whites. So this is who this document is addressed to, right? And remember that we're still dealing with these individuals that want to play a game like they own what Noble Drew Ali brought, and that you're not supposed to have access to it. You understand where I'm going, right? So when we were talking about taking checks and the sellout, right? This is in 1969, and this would be information that all the heads of all these organizations would know, because the sellout was high up. The sellout wasn't, some brothers on the block trying to undermine their own people's thing, right? The sellout was get into the Universal Negro Improvement Association, right, which was around the same time as Noble Drew Ali, between 1913 and 1929, right? Get into the NAACP, which was around that same time, and get into the Moorish movement, right? Prior to Noble Drew Ali starting the Moorish movement, there were other institutions that were already doing this activity of bringing people to a different perspective of looking at themselves, right, and carrying themselves, right? Like, nobody talks about during slavery techniques that were used to get out of slavery, right? Majority of it was change how your dress code is. And that's all you have to do. Work, get enough money so you can buy a suit, and change the whole frequency, right? And then that's where the whole thing comes out about, a man is what he wears, right? Like some slavery story is why people use that phrase today. And the whole objective of it was changing the frequency. What Noble Drew Ali was coming to do was tell us to get out of the frequency of Negro, black, colored, and Ethiopian, which would be African. Because those were labels, not real national names of people. So when he started pushing this idea there were organizations at the same time as him saying that they were Negro and they were colored and they were black, right? Now, a lot of those organizations are still around today, right? And you heard about them, right? Okay. And when it comes to the Moorish Science Temple of America, this is very new to you. All right. It's new to you because there are 12 major minority organizations, and all are familiar to the 22 million. Dossiers have been compiled on the leaders of the organizations. Don't forget that the person who wrote this thing right here, he's a leader. He's a head, right? So don't think we're talking about some low-level individual. This is somebody whose activity is supposed to be with councilmen and mayors, and that's the jurisdiction of people he is supposed to be engaging if he says who he says he is, right? The material contained in many of the dossiers and our threat to reveal that material has considerably held in check the activities of some of the leaders. Leaders who do not have such usable material in their dossiers have been approached to take government posts, mainly as ambassadors and primarily in African countries. The promise of these positions also has materially contributed to a temporary slowdown of minority activities. So when they started the infiltration in the 1960s, right, which isn't really when they started it, they really started it from Noble Drew Ali's time, right? But they push it from the 1960s in order to make emphasis of how hard they're going to go at this black thing that people were pushing in the 1960s, right? Because this is a military document, but this is foresight. This isn't something for right now. This is something in 1969. This was something for future implementation, and we're at that time right now where this is implemented, right? However, we do not expect these slowdowns to be of long duration because there are always new and dissident elements joining these organizations with the potential power to replace the old leaders. All organizations, okay, so let's stop there, right? However, we do not expect these slowdowns to be of long duration because there are always new and dissident elements joining these organizations with the potential power to replace the old leaders. That's why they killed El Haj Malik Shabazz. Okay, you know who Malcolm X is?
Oh, I asked you that question the other day, remember?
Okay, right. So similar to the Noble Drew Ali issue. If you know who Malcolm X is, and you know who Muhammad Ali is, you know who Cassius Clay is. Who's Cassius Clay?
Same person, Muhammad Ali and Cassius Clay.
But what happened?
He changed his name to Muhammad Ali.
Oh, okay. So, and
that's the slave name.
Oh, okay, all right. So, what about Muhammad Ali and Malcolm X? They had relations, like they lived in the same time frame.
Right.
Okay, so how come you don't know that Malcolm X changed his name?
I don't know. I always know Malcolm X.
Yeah, because the agents, the infiltrator heads of, for this example, the Nation of Islam. So we're talking about Fard Muhammad, Elijah Muhammad, the early founders, right? Were agents.
Okay. So what about also Farrakhan? Is he an agent too?
He's telling people they're black people.
Yeah. Okay.
And this document is going directly at black people. And he's going to continue calling them black people, knowing that there's a plan in place to exterminate people that call themselves black. And he's going to say we have a 1 million man march, and 1 million people are going to go. 5 million people will go. Right?
What march did you say?
1 million man march. Right? Because remember that.
1 million man march, that happens yearly, right?
No. It was something that they did. It was like a once in a. Yeah.
Isn't there a million?
Yeah. After that, there was a million everything marches. After
Because
that,
I know there is. I've heard of it before. Million Man March,
yeah,
where they go to New York,
Washington.
Washington.
Yeah.
Yeah. Is it the same thing?
Yeah, that same thing. Yeah.
Never like Falcon.
Yeah. Right. So the reason they killed El Hajj, right, Malik El Shabazz, that's his name, because we don't call we don't call Muhammad Ali Cassius Clay. Okay, so we shouldn't be calling him Malcolm X because that's not his name. He changed his name. So El Hajj Malik El Shabazz got murdered by the Nation of Islam. Right? Now, you know that he got murdered by the Nation of Islam because when he was on stage, his bodyguards weren't there. And when he was on stage, right before the guy shot him, he had a smirk on his face because he already knew that they were going to assassinate him. He wasn't not expecting it. But the thing is why? Because he found out that all these people call themselves Nation of Islam are running the biggest fraud on the planet as far as an organization for the liberation of our people, because they're speaking in terms of nationhood, right? But they're claiming that their nation is a religion, which is a fraud, because a nation can't be a religion. A religion can't be a nation. So he can play that game with black Al Sharptons and black other people, right? Black presidents. He can play that game here. But when he goes out into international waters, he doesn't talk that big talk that he talks when he's here. He humbles himself when he goes in international waters, right? Because you can't make certain claims. And it was at the Million Man March with him talking about he was the president of the NOI and all this stuff, and they almost kidnapped him, right? Because when you become an agent to the cause, you can't talk about master. And this is why they killed El Hajj, because he removed himself, right? But he was still, sincere enough to give honor to Elijah Muhammad, because that's who taught him.
And that goes to say that when he's out in the international venue there, they don't realize what's going on. They're watching us.
Right.
And they're waiting. What's with you people?
Exactly.
What's with you people?
What is with you
people? They all know. That's when he goes out, he's going to humble himself, like you said, because they know what's going on. And they're asking. That's
cool. Okay. So the infiltrated organizations under 24-hour surveillance since 1969 until right now, right, is the Black Muslims Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, SNCC, Congress of Racial Equality, Uru Movement, Group on Advanced Leadership, Freedom Now Party, United Black Nationalists of America, New Pan-African Movement, National Urban League, National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, and Committee of Racial and Religious Progress. Right? At the appropriate time to be designated by the President, the leaders of some of these organizations are to be detained only when it is clear that they cannot prevent the emergency. Working with local public officials during the first critical hours, all other leaders are to be detained at once. Compiled lists of minority leaders have been readied at the National Data Computer Center. It is necessary to use the minority leaders designated by the President in much the same manner in which we use minority members who are agents with central and federal. We cannot, until there is no alternative, reveal King Alfred in all its aspects. Minority members of Congress will be unseated at once. This move is not without precedent in American history. Attorney General. This memo is being submitted in lieu of a full report from the Joint Chiefs of Staff. The report is now in preparation. There will be many cities where the minority will be able to put into the street a superior number of people with a desperate and dangerous will. He will be a formidable enemy, for he is bound to the continent by heritage and knows that political asylum will not be available to him in other countries.
When was that written, you said?
1969. Right? So this document is saying that he, the minority, blacks, Indians, Latinos, Puerto Ricans, and poor whites, right, will be a formidable enemy because blacks, Indians, Latinos, Puerto Ricans, and poor whites are the minority, but there's also Chinese and Indians, Hindus, Sri Lankans, Pakistani, and those people who are also us. Exactly. That's why they're not on this list. That's why they're not on this list. Because their mentality is not that I'm a slave. Their mentality is that I'm a national. Right? We always bring up the example of when the Sri Lankans shut down the Gardner. No rioting. No police pepper spraying people. No Billy Baton and no water hose people, dogs biting people, old racism, and they're trying to take our rights away. Yo, none of that. Rush hour shut down one of the main arteries in the city, and nobody did anything about it. Yeah, because they're national. And if anybody touch them, they're gonna have to deal with Sri Lanka. Because they're nationals, which is the highest class of citizen.
So how did you become a national?
By proclaiming your nationality. But proclaiming your nationality isn't just a mere statement. Proclaiming your nationality is being active in your dealings with the world, because everybody on the planet is waiting for the Moors to take their place again. Like, everybody's waiting. The whole entire world right now is on pause, and everybody's just waiting.
It's way of life, right? That's how you're gonna live.
Because as far as like, let's go back to this, right? Now, the perspective that this individual speaks from, right, is quote unquote the divine perspective, right? The perspective dealing with true religion, true doctrine, dealing with elevating oneself from a lower self to a higher self, right? And in that perspective, they're masters, right? They have books and books and books and books and books, but all their books are dealing with the religious side, right? The Moorish movement, Noble Drew Ali himself said that this movement, because he makes big statements in here, like he makes big statements in here like I'm afraid to die or something, right? Like, I'm afraid to die.
You or him?
Me.
You? Why?
he's making statements like words are gonna have some type of effect on what I do. I'm gonna read some stuff that he says, right? People have to really digest that this thing that Noble Drew Ali founded wasn't some good idea that he came up with, right? This was for the redemption of Negro, black, colored people, period. And the only way that these people are going to be redeemed, right? The only way that these people are going to be redeemed is being civic minded in their approach with everything that they deal with, from go to the store to buy milk to buy a house. If you're not civic minded, which is what was taken out of the teachings of Noble Drew Ali, to get the people to be passive and waiting for something to happen, whether it's their leader who's a sellout agent, right? Because you have to be a sellout agent if you know that there's more than one perspective to something, but you're only teaching one perspective. Somebody must be paying you not to teach the other perspective, when in the same literature, like he's saying, well, let's go to this, right? So the beginning, what are the so-called Canaanland Moors teaching, right? This is my brief response to the so-called reply to Lord Abba by the fake Canaanland Moors. I will address some of their falsehoods step by step from the first hour of the video. By the hypocrite calling himself Cujo and dog with rabies. I would also do the second hour, but it is not necessary. I am going to speaking directly to the fool himself, just as he spoke to Abba in his video, even though the debate had been cancelled.
What do you mean by dogs and rabies?
No, he's like saying that I'm a dog with rabies.
Okay.
Right?
Okay.
Okay. Right. Like, it's no thing. Like, everybody's entitled to their opinion, and you can write whatever you want, and you can, right?
If he's supposed to be an educated person,
right? So right? So we don't even have to. We don't have to do nothing. We don't have to do nothing. All we're doing right now is we're just putting up the board, and we're just throwing darts at the board. That's all. That's all we're doing right now. We're just throwing darts at the board, right? Because they're gonna do what they're gonna do regardless. That's just how agents do. Once you have a check, you're not gonna change when you know that you were wrong, right? There's things that he's talking about in here that it's like, obviously there's different perspectives, right? Obviously there's different perspectives, but when he's going to make the statement, for example, you deal with Orishas, gods of the Yoruba religion. Where is it in our Muslim lessons? Right? Now, Noble Drew Ali himself, right, said to go back to the minds of your ancient foremothers and forefathers. Right? So, if I go back to the minds of my ancient foremothers and forefathers, I'm not just gonna study Islam. I'm also gonna study Buddhism. I'm also gonna study Taoism. I'm also gonna study martial arts. I'm also gonna study occult and voodoo and witchcraft. Everything that was before slavery, I'm gonna study that. Because all of it applies, because all of it in actuality is more science, because all of it is ours. Our problem is that we burn the bridge, just like he's doing right now, burning the bridge, right? And people have to realize that there's people that have their position. You can go check their website. You can go watch all their videos, and their perspective is religious. That's their box that they're in, right? And when we say religion, we're not talking about go to church and pray and, right? When we say religion, we're talking about science. We're talking about metaphysics. We're talking about, astrology. That's what we're saying, right? As far as religion, right? We're not talking about dogma and rituals, right? Even though they might get engaged in dogma and rituals for the dumb public that sit in those seats, right? They're gonna put out the perspective from the religious side or the quote unquote divine side, and then make a statement that, well, there's no such thing as a national side of the Moorish movement. It's called a Moorish divine movement, and the only thing that we're supposed to do is divine, right? But then when you go to the writings, because he said, okay, well, go read Historical Message for America. Okay, so let's go to Historical Message for America.
Who is that person?
Huh?
Who is that person?
I don't know, but he's his dad. You know what I mean? Apple doesn't fall far from the tree, right? We organized as the Moorish Temple of Science in the year 1925, right? And were legally incorporated as a civic organization under the laws of the state of Illinois, 1926. The name Moorish Temple of Science was changed to Moorish Science Temple of America, 1928, in accordance with the legal requirements of the Secretary of State. The object of our organization is to help in the great program of uplifting fallen humanity. Right? Now, all through this thing, he's talking about me being homosexual because I'm pushing matriarchy. Right? We're putting this out there so that you can know what you're up against. If you don't get yourself, because look at it like this. Regardless of what's going on in the Moorish movement, right? Whether you as individuals are involved in it or not involved in it, you're still involved in it. Because anybody that calls themselves Negro, Black, Colored people, we're going to go back to King Alfred Plan again, right? Now, we talk about this in class all the time, but we're bringing this up just because you're new, so you can have a perspective of the importance of nationality, right? So Hitler nationalized Germany, right? And there was a big war because he did that, right? And when he nationalized Germany, he basically said, well, anybody that's in Germany, you need to proclaim that you're German or get the hell out. Period. Like, there's no questions or no asking anything. We're the ones in charge, so this is how it's going down. He had that right to nationalize, right? Certain people decided that they don't want to be Germans, they want to be a religion, right? And got slaughtered, right? By multitudes, right? And then today, we can look back at that and they'll show you all these pictures of these dead bodies that they had, right? To build up the sympathy, right? Vibes, right? So that means that Hitler and what he did, there's evidence that you can use. There's tangible evidence, visual evidence that you can use to show that he was an evil, bad person and that, he should die. Right? Zero Committee Report. Survey shows that during a 6-year period, production created 9 million objects, or 1,500,000 each year. Production could not dispose of the containers, which proved a bottleneck. However, that was almost 20 years ago. We suggest that vaporization techniques be employed to overcome the production problems inherent with King Alfred. What does that mean to you?
I'm not sure.
Let's read it again. Survey shows that during a 6-year period, production created 9 million objects, or 1,500,000 each year. Production could not dispose of the containers, which proved a bottleneck. However, that was almost 20 years ago. We suggest that vaporization techniques be employed to overcome the production problems inherent in King Alfred.
So they're talking about back then they got rid of that whole set of people.
Right.
So now they're saying if they're going to do the same thing again,
right,
they have to come up with a better plan.
All right. And the plan is?
And the plan is like what they do? What they use like
vaporization. What's vaporization?
Like they're going to basically wipe out.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So yeah.
All right.
So they plan to wipe us out.
Right. Well, they plan to wipe out Negro, black, colored people.
Yeah.
Right. Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, during slavery times, there were people called the Ku Klux Klan that were doing the same extermination. Extermination. Oh, they're still today doing the same extermination, right? Okay. Now, let's look at this. Let's look at this civically, right? Are these people being exterminated because somebody's racist, or are these people being exterminated because they're calling themselves something that they're not and they have no purpose in society?
They don't have any purpose.
What purpose black people have?
What purpose we have?
No, I'm not saying. Understand what I'm saying, right? People that call themselves black, right? That live in black communities, right? That are comfortable living in black communities and calling themselves black when they're brown people and doing nothing and amounting to nothing, don't serve a purpose. They're not doing anything industrious. They're not doing anything scientific. They're not doing anything to uplift them, right? Okay, these people become a burden on society. All right. So if society is falling or falling, and the people in charge are trying to save society, what are they going to do? Simple, right? In order for them to have the power to do that, the people have to be denationalized. The people's nationality has to be taken away from them in order for them to be in that position of them having this document saying they're going to exterminate these people who are labeled black, Indians, whatever, right? So we have to ask ourselves a question, right? And we don't even really have to ask ourselves the question. We can just go to the prophet because he did it years ago, right? So this is from 1929, and this is a statement that he put out in the Moorish Guide newspaper, which was the Moors newspaper. Just like how there's Toronto Sun and Indians have a paper and Sri Lankans have a paper, Greeks have a paper, Moors had a paper in 1929, right, called the Moorish Guide, right? And this is an excerpt from the Moorish Guide, Friday, September 14th, 1929. When the forefathers of the Moorish Americans were first brought to this nation, they had a nationality and a name. But in order to separate them from the achievements of their fathers, a name was given to them which had no connection whatsoever with the founders of civilization. They were nicknamed Negroes. Today in this nation, there are no such thing as Negroes in this sense that they are called. Just why so many of the intelligent Americans will continue to cling to this nickname is hard to understand. If you look in some of the dictionaries, you will see that the word Negro means a sly person, a coon. If this is not an insult to the illustrious history of a nation, there can never be one given. Just as they have saddled on the Moorish Americans the name Negro, they have also given him a religion that was made to enslave him and stop his progress. It is the duty of every man who lives to redeem the name of his forefathers and not be herded into a mass of weaklings. Stop referring to yourself as Negro, colored, and black, for you are neither. You are men. American citizens, speak up for yourselves, or you will never be done. As long as you wear clothes of another, or live in the house of another, or depend on another in any manner, you are truly a slave to them. If you would be free indeed, you must seek the truth. You must know the truth of your nationality and the name of your people. You must not be a coward and deny yourself the personal rights that belong to every man. Moorish science explains this in a manner satisfactory to all. Come out and free yourselves. So what do you say? You must know what the truth of your nationality and the name of your people. Right? Nationality is civics. So these people that are teaching that Noble Drew Ali brought some type of religion in order to save you are doing the same thing like the preachers and the imams and everybody else is doing. Trying to enslave you. Because you don't need a middleman to help you be saved. The prophet's your middleman. You have that already. Somebody's trying to step in between you and the prophet and steal your birthright. And they've been doing that ever since 1930, which is why you have not heard about Noble Drew Ali until you started coming here. Which is fraud. Because if you know about Marcus Garvey, who was around the same time as Noble Drew Ali, and you know about Elijah Muhammad, who were around the same time as Noble Drew Ali, you know Fard Muhammad, you know W. Du Bois, you know Oscar the Priest, you know all these first black whatever between 1900 and 1930, and you don't know who Noble Drew Ali is, and he doesn't come up, and then there's books out there that talks about all these same people that we're talking about, but Noble Drew Ali is not in there. Yeah, that's a very big problem, right? That's a very big problem because he, just like he laid out, stop referring to yourself as Negroes. This is 1929. It's 1929. It's being put out there. Stop referring to yourself as Negroes. And 2012.
This should be taught in the school. In the schools for all children. That's what the issue is. That's why we have all these problems.
I read an article they're going to start teaching even about Marcus Garvey in September.
Yeah.
So that we gradually this thing enter into the school system.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there because he's from there.
Yes.
They're gonna do that here.
They're gonna do that here.
They'll do that there.
Keeping the dark here as much as you can.
Yeah. Because it's all about keeping you in the dark. And then once you're kept in the dark, now you're black.
Yeah, because when I said it, I was good.
That's why the children are struggling.
My youngest son was fortunate. He told me the other day, the doctor told me this, is that at school they had
just talk up a little bit so this.
They had a teacher come in doing some history class, and to the side, the teacher, to him and another person color per se,
Yeah.
another young child, and another one of the friends said that the teacher did.
Yeah.
While they were signed up, and the rest of the group
Yeah.
didn't hear that. And I said, oh, that's good. At least there's some people out there who are willing to say that, you know, there's things going wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah, they don't teach a proper history here.
Yeah. But see, right, so just like you're saying, right, the proper history is supposed to be taught in school, right? Okay. So in this same book that, now, this is the 101 questionnaire book, right? And it's Quran questions for Moorish children.
Mm-hmm.
But adults are going to read this.
Mm-hmm.
But it's for Moorish children, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which is showing us where we were when Noble Drew Ali brought this information to us.
Mm-hmm.
Because this was new to us, we were like children with it. So we had to be groomed with this.
Mm-hmm.
But if they don't groom you with you're not Negro black colored, then you're going to go around calling yourself Negro black colored and hanging on the slave tree, and then you come back in another life and you call yourself Negro black color again, and then you hang on the slave tree again, and then you come back in another life, and then you Negro black, police are beating you up, police shoot you up, and all because you call yourself this label, right? That does not identify you.
Mm-hmm.
It characterizes you, right? So
back to the Sri Lankan. One day ago, there was, I can't remember the starting off the exact conversation, but this one co-worker keep on referring to the Sri Lankans as brown people.
Yeah.
And the other party saying, no, they are Sri Lankans. And keep on, if they're brown people, they're brown people. And the other party keep on saying, no, they're called Sri Lankan or Tamils, one of those
right.
nations.
Yeah.
So now you're talking about all this is coming back to me, brown people.
Right. Yeah, and he's saying that, no, they're not brown people because...
This was a Greek person saying that.
Yeah.
Said they are brown people.
Yeah.
And the other party is saying, no, they are not brown people, they're Tamil or Sri Lanka, whatever. It's one of those two. I can't remember exactly which one it was.
Yeah. And that's because everybody knows.
Referring to as brown people, to those Tamil or Sri Lankan, one of those nations. And the other party said, no, they're not brown people. And this other one keep on going, they're brown people. So now, I'm hearing this about this brown people, that means that party probably knows something about
nationality.
This thing,
Right. Because when you think about it too, right, what would that Greek person call somebody who was Jamaican standing next to that Sri Lankan person?
Well, I was standing right there.
Yeah.
I was standing right there, and he knows where I'm from.
Yeah. Where did he call you?
But he wasn't referring to me.
Right.
He was referring
to them. Right. But I'm saying, what would they call you?
Probably black.
Right. Right. But you and that Sri Lankan person have the same complexion.
Exactly.
Okay, so then, right?
Exactly.
And then Sri Lankans that are darker than us, they don't call them black.
No.
Asians that are darker than us, they don't call them black. They still call them by their name of the landmass that they came from. Right? So we're talking about, we're supposed to be taught this, right? So since 1913, right, Noble Drew Ali put this in order, right? All members must promptly attend their meetings and send their children to Sunday school. And everybody thought Sunday school was some church teach you about the Holy Quran and teach you about the spiritual, all the religious crap. When that's not what school is about. Because right after that he says, and the teacher must confirm himself to the questionnaire. So the teacher, this is the teacher's teaching tools in Sunday school. Period. Anything else, people are doing on their own. Because it's their obligation to study what they don't know. It's not my obligation to tell you what you don't know. it's my obligation to give you references of where you can find what you're looking for, and you go look for it, right? But people like Saadi, they want to play just like the other guy that we were debating. They want to play the leader role, and they want to do the, block this guy, say whatever to block this guy, and then have all the people that are in support of this person jump ship and come on this ship that he's on, right? Or get people to be of his mind frame. Because really and truly, if you're a more scientist, the idea of, let's say, for example, drawing people, right? Bringing people in. Like, there's people right now there's people that are in this movement, right? And them being in this movement is because the spirit wants them in this movement. Not because them personally. Because the spirit wants them to be in this to do something. That's everybody's perspective coming into this. That there's a slot that you fit in. But only you're going to know what slot you're supposed to fit in. Because really and truly, what Noble Drew Ali brought you is yours. He didn't bring you something that was his and then he's giving it to you, so now you have it. He's bringing you your thing that you dropped back there. That you didn't even know you dropped. Right? Because we were so caught up in being from Africa. We came over here. When the ship trip was actually from America to the Caribbean islands. That was the transporting of the slaves and the transatlantic slave trade they're talking about.
There was no African slavery.
These guys aren't coming from no boat from all the way in Africa over here. You know how long that trip is? You know how long it is to take a boat from Africa to America, and you have to feed the crew, right? The whole crew has to get fed. You have to feed all those slaves that you're bringing over. These millions of slaves that they have in the bottom of the boat chained up because they have to eat, right? You have, urine, feces, or whatever that you're not cleaning up for 6 months or whatever on a ship. You have these people saying that they're kings and queens of Europe, but they're scared to go in the water because if you go to that line, you're going to go off the edge of the world. And dinosaurs are monsters, dolphins are monsters, and whales are monsters in the sea, and octopus are monsters going to bring down the boat and all that type of stuff. But they're going to be taking people on a ship across the ocean. That makes sense, But you tell a slave anything, and they'll buy it. You sell a slave their own shoe. You steal their shoes, and they're complaining that they have no shoes, and you're going to sell them the shoes that you stole from them, and they're going to buy it. That's slave mentality. And that's what Noble Drew Ali came to correct. And he didn't come to correct that with religion. He came to correct that with you beginning to study the law. You beginning to look at international protocol and how other people do things, right? Look at the Sri Lankans. How did they block off a main artery in downtown Toronto in rush hour and not get billy club, nothing, no paddy wagons, nothing? Police were actually helping them. Police actually put up barricades and stuff to help them.
Why can't we get that recognition?
Because we have no nationality. Because we want to be black, Negro, colored. Yeah, we're loose, right? We're loose. We're the girl every man ran train on. Loose. And nobody wants to deal with us. That's why they're doing King Alfred plan, and they're going to exterminate these people because they become a burden on society that are amounting to nothing. And like they said, everybody that's ahead is going to be, they're the first ones that's going to be detained. All the people who think that, yeah, I took a check, so they're gonna, pass me. No, they're first.
But what else do you know? Can something be done so that the rest of us so-called black know about this and come together as one group?
See, no. When you say come together as one group, you're talking about unity. When you say come together as one group,
like a national.
You're talking about unity, right? Okay, unity to be fully active is nationality. Unity without nationality is just come together, eat some food, dance.
No, I'm not talking about
right,
that.
right. Because that's where we've gone. That's where we've been. That's where majority of us are willing to go because they're content with that being unity. When unity really is nationality, and Noble Drew Ali brought it. It's not even complicated, right? If you think you're Negro, black, colored, or Ethiopian, proclaim your nationality because you're not those things, because those things were names given to slaves by slaveholders. But people aren't going to take that serious. They're just going to say, oh no, that's just the funny guy, the funny hat guy talking, so don't worry about that, right? But when they get abused, they're going to be quick to say racism. But it's not racism. It's you're calling yourself football and you get mad when people kick you. How about just don't call yourself football? How about call yourself what you are? But it's not an overnight process, because if we count, 2013 is going to be 100 years since Noble Drew Ali came.
But we as West Indians, we call ourselves West Indians.
Yeah. Yeah, we do. But, do we call ourselves because that's who we are, or because somebody labeled us that?
That's what we grew up to know.
Yeah. From who?
From the ones ahead of us.
Right. And what was their position?
They were slaves.
Oh, okay. So who taught them?
Yeah. So we should be calling ourselves Moors.
That would be a better name to call yourself, because if you go ask anybody else, they'll know what that is immediately.
Yeah. So how do we register ourselves now as a Moor?
You're that. This is what they didn't want you to. They want you to look at this as some group that you're joining something. Like you're a Moor. Whether you knew it or not, that's what you are. Yeah. Whether you called yourself black, whatever, in the past, the point is that you are a Moor.
Today I'm a Moor.
Right? When you were born, you were a Moor.
Okay, so what I'm saying now, on paper, going back to the birth certificate and stuff.
Yeah.
They don't send Moor on there.
No, it doesn't have to say Moor on there.
Okay.
Right? Because when Noble Drew Ali says the teacher has to stick to the questionnaire, right? It's for us to get it broken down to us so that it's understandable, right? Where was Noble Drew Ali born? In the state of North Carolina, 1886. What is his nationality? Moorish American. What is your nationality? Moorish American. Why are we Moorish Americans? Because we are descendants of Moroccans and born in America.
So
Moroccans are Moors.
All right. So Moroccans are Moors. Okay. Right. And we are Moorish Americans because we are descendants of Moroccans, but born in America, which includes what was labeled the West Indies, because you could see Venezuela from Trinidad.
So you're saying the West Indies was part of America?
Right. It still is.
It still is. So someone tampered with the map.
Where look at it from okay, what is the West Indies closest to? So,
South America.
okay, so it's closer to South America, right?
No,
Central America, South America, right? Like close,
Yeah.
real close. Okay, so when you go on the other side of the world, right, and there's a little island off from the coast, isn't that connected on that side?
Well, that's what I need to look at the map again, because I don't. Yeah, but yeah.
So like Jamaica, it's America.
Yeah.
You said the whole Caribbean is part
Okay,
of America.
so right. Okay, let's speak. Let's talk in code, right?
Okay.
No, you used to live in Jamaica.
Mm-hmm.
You went to school there.
Mm-hmm.
All right. When you went to school, Jamaica was known as a republic, right?
Mm-hmm.
Do they call it republic today?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
That was when they took it out of the America
Mm-hmm.
jurisdiction
Mm-hmm.
and made it a British jurisdiction,
Oh, I see what you're saying.
right? And then now they're saying that they're independent,
Mm-hmm.
but they're not really independent. It's a ploy. If you're going to be independent, you have to be in. Independence comes from self.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody can't give you independence.
Mm-hmm.
When they have the song, the girls that I'm an independent woman or whatever,
Yeah.
they're talking about some girls over there, or they're talking about themselves, right? But without thinking, we don't see what's going on.
Okay. Now, let's get to the Canada part now. There's Moorish America, right?
Yeah.
Does Canada fall under that category also?
Okay. Where is Canada located on the map?
Well, it's next to America.
Okay. So Canada is next to Brazil? Because Brazil is America.
Brazil's America?
Yeah.
I need to look at this map again.
Do you understand where we're going?
Mm-hmm.
Right? So if we're saying Canada, right?
Mm-hmm.
The jurisdiction above Canada would be the continent, because Canada is supposedly the country,
Mm-hmm.
right? The continent of North America
Mm-hmm.
has how much countries in it? Canada, Mexico, and then a place in between Mexico and Canada called United States, right? The people in Canada are called Canadians,
Right.
and people in Mexicans are called, and what's the people in the United States called?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so the people in the United States are Brazilians, because they're Americans too, but they call themselves Brazilian Americans.
Mm-hmm.
And then Peruvians call themselves Peruvian Americans, and Mexicans call themselves Mexican Americans.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so these people in between Mexico and Canada, what are they supposed to be called? Because America is a geographical location, so they can't be that, because America is a continent.
But the reason why those people call themselves Mexican American is because, like, they're from Mexico, right? They moved there, and now they say they're Americans.
Well, they always
Just
been in
like
Mexico.
They were born there, sorry.
Yeah.
Just like you say Afro-American. You're not supposed to use that word.
Yeah.
Right.
I'm just saying.
Because those are nothing.
Yeah.
What's an Afro-American?
Yeah.
What's a African American?
That's true.
Right. What is that?
It is true. What is that?
You're from Africa. You're born in
In America.
You're
Right.
from, your parents is from Africa.
Right.
And then your siblings born in America.
Right. But But then, right? But then when you talk to somebody from Ghana, they're not Ghanaian African or Zimbabwean African, or when you talk to Chinese, they're not Chinese Asian, and right. So when Noble Drew Ali said, "Why are we Moorish Americans? Because we are descendants of Moroccans born in America," he was speaking in code, because the real name of the place above Mexico is Morocco. And there's no such thing as Canada or the United States. Those are two private corporations that have nothing to do with government whatsoever.
So how do I find all this out on paper?
Come to class. Now there's lots of videos, and there's books, there's more with literature and stuff like that. So it's not that you can't find it, but it's perspective.
Yeah.
Right? Like we're
She does for a living. She trades on roads.
Right.
Right. Do that, and you look, and you go, oh, you'll understand.
Yeah.
You'll understand nothing.
Yeah. Right. Because if once the people have the right perspective, they can make a decision now on whether maybe like for how I look at it, people who come into the movement and they stick to the religious side, because the spirit doesn't want them for this. They're in this for some other karmic reason, right? They're here to really better themselves. Going on the religious side, because that's dealing with cleaning up your chakras, channeling yourself, grounding yourself, and all that, right? The ones that are on the national side, right, or the active side, or the civic side, the spirit wants you for this, right? Because you have to be working with the spirits in order to be able to deal with what you go up against when you make this statement that I'm not black, I'm a Moor, or I'm not Negro, I'm a Moor. Like people get damaged when they make that statement. This is what we're saying about you have to be like, you have to like go home, get the candles and have a nice shower or bath or something, and really think about like people are gonna get vaporized, and like it's real serious what's going on right now.
No, I'm not.
You know what I mean?
I'm not gonna get damaged.
Right? It's real serious.
I'm not gonna get damaged. Because I always knew there's something wrong.
Right.
I always knew there's something wrong.
No, but not damage in the sense of somebody attacking you because of what you know or whatever. They're gonna use you as an example to deter other people, right? So once you can deal with that, the fact that okay, I really this, because with this information, when you start studying the civic side, you're just gonna have just light bulbs just going off. Like you're just gonna be like, oh my gosh, there's so much that I don't know. There's so much I need to know right now. But it doesn't have to happen right now, because it's a process. Like we're breaking ourselves out of mental slavery. So it's not gonna be. It might be for some people cold turkey, right? That they just tomorrow they wake up and they know what this is and they don't have any. You know what I mean? And then that's how you know that spirit's working with those people, because they would just gravitate to this like it was some black Negro color stuff that they were involved in, because they have it from the right perspective now, knowing politically what Negro, black, colored, African American, West Indian, Caribbean, what all these labels are politically, not personally or emotionally or whatever, knowing what those are politically, right? Because You know, there are people that know this. There are people that they're not confused about the fact that there's no such people on the planet called Negro, black, colored people. There's no such people on the planet that have a red, black, green flag, and that's their flag of their nation. And there's no nation in the world that has a flag with a crescent and star in it, and they represent that as their national flag. That's madness. That's fraud. Like people aren't even playing those foolish ones, right? Either you belong to a nation, right, or you're stateless and you have nothing, right? Let's see what else in here that we could. Because a lot of it is him throwing shots, to get some chest big ups,
Yep.
right? Some ego stuff. Show how much he knows because he is the supreme grand sheik of the whatever. So he knows this much, and because he knows this much, whatever. Like, we play the game because we already know that it's a fraud. We already know that they don't got the right perspective. We already know that they're passive Moors. That they might have some books out and whatever, but if you're only teaching about people about religion, you're only teaching people about um, the spiritual side of things, and you're not teaching them how to deal with practical things like every day,
Yep.
right now. Like and like I'm saying, like, okay, let's say, like, for example, um, the power on a local level, the power of nationality, right?
Mhm.
There's majority of people that we see in Toronto, right, that own businesses
Mhm.
are of some foreign nationality.
Mhm.
They're not our people.
Mhm.
Somebody else from some other place, right? 80% of those people are Muslim,
Mhm.
right? You know how much relations we get when we go into a store and have one of these feathers on?
With the Muslim?
Yeah, because they know what this is just by looking at it.
Yeah.
They don't even have to have any discussion about it. They recognize that this is not
I know what
a
you're saying.
black nigger guy,
Mhm.
right? He has assalamu alaikum, alaikum salam, and we're dialoguing,
Mhm.
having conversation. He might even throw an extra drink in my combo, right? Because we've built international relation, right? It's like one of the brothers drives around with the Moroccan flag on his car, and had a brother chase him down the other day, like chase him down. Oh my gosh, you from Morocco? Well, yeah, I'm from Morocco. Oh, what part of Morocco? I'm from Fez. I'm from Morocco, America. What do you mean? Morocco, America. You know what I mean? And that turned into a dialogue.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? That this man is going back now into his, just like how you were going back into your memory of past stuff, and he's like, oh yeah, I remember my granddad was telling me about, the Moors coming and doing this and giving us this and giving us that or whatever. Just from a little flag on a card.
Mhm.
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
this $1 million march thing.
That's bothering you.
I'm going back to it. I know there's some. The last time I read about it. It was some years ago, and I think some men from Toronto here and St. Catherine went to this march.
Yeah, probably do.
But I can't remember all the
We're gonna try something local.
specific. No,
No, they
some
went.
Canadian men went.
They probably
Yes,
went to
this
join in.
$1 march, and I'm trying to think now. How did I react to that thing? There was some write up about it in the paper. I think that's where I read it on the news.
Mhm.
But I know it's in the media thing. And some woman in St. Catherine said talk about her husband went to this thing. I don't remember how the
Yeah,
details now,
yeah.
but now that you talk about this, it comes back
Mm.
to me.
And that's really how
Either the fact-
that's really how like that's really how they get people, right?
When they go to March.
When they go to March, right? Because what are you doing when you go march, when you go
That
picket,
time I didn't understand what it
when you
was
go
all about.
do
Maybe
these,
I kind of have an idea, but it wasn't clear.
right? Okay, so why is it that they make us march, picket, and all that stuff in order to get us to give up energy, right? So when, like, if you see me drink the water, it's energy. It's not water. Eat some food, it's energy. The computer's working cause of energy. Camera's working cause of energy. Lights cause of energy. So it's really energy. The things that they make us be scatterbrained about is deceptive meanings of words. So when we talk about when they in the news talk about economics, they actually mean energy. They're not talking about money and gold and silver, and they're talking about the people's energy, right? So this is what King Alfred Plan is saying about energy, right, and economics. Economics is only a social extension of a natural energy system. It also has its three passive components. Because of the distribution of wealth and the lack of communication and consequent lack of data, this field has been the last energy field for which a knowledge of these three passive components has been developed. Since energy is the key to all activity on the face of the earth, it follows that in order to attain a monopoly of energy, raw materials, goods, and services, and to establish a world system of slave labor, it is necessary to first strike capability in the field of economics. In order to maintain our position, it is necessary that we have absolute first knowledge of the science of control over all economic factors and the first experience at engineering the world economy. In order to achieve such sovereignty, we must at least achieve this one end, that the public will not make either the logical or mathematical connection between economics and the other energy sciences or learn to apply such knowledge. This is becoming increasingly difficult to control because more and more businesses are making demands upon their computer programmers to create and apply mathematical models for the management of these businesses. It is only a matter of time before the now breed of private programmer economists will catch on to the far-reaching implications of the work begun at Harvard in 1948. The speed in which they can communicate their warning to the public will largely depend on how effective we have been in controlling the media, subverting education, and keeping the public distracted with matters of no real importance. Right? So the reason why we, when we started up, and I was saying that, don't be shy to open to your questions and stuff like that, and bring up things, because part of the King Alfred program is to keep people distracted, right, with matters of no real importance, like this blog that this guy put up.
I'm just trying to understand and trying to figure out. how am I going to make this a part of my life? How does in every part of my life?
Okay, so let me use examples of people who have been doing this that I know, so you can see the potential of where this could go, right? One example is a brother by the name of Alim El Bey. Right now, Alim El Bey is another Moorish brother out there doing the work. He has, businesses, and he has, activity that he does, right? Because of him proclaiming his nationality and coming back into his true correct self, right? He made public declarations that were filed on the public record in North Carolina, right? And the public record is basically where the county recorder's office is. So the idea of coming into the movement was you proclaim your nationality, right? And then you go through the process over a period of time, however long it takes you to get yourself in order, right? Through studying civics, through going to civic classes, through going to Sunday school, through studying on your own, through getting with other Moors that have study groups and whatever, studying with them, putting information together, and broadening your perspective all the time, because your perspective is always going to be broadening, right? So the process is you get your nationality paperwork, and everything is supposed to come from that temple, that institution. They're supposed to prepare all your paperwork and everything like that, go with you, file it, and have a copy for their records, and you have a copy for your records. When you have that paperwork, now you go to all of these agencies that you have certain things in the other name, and you get them to change the name, because this thing is on the public record, so it can't be disputed, right? So we in about 2006 we did a lecture with Alim. He lives in North Carolina, and he drove up here, right? And he drove and used his paperwork to come over the border, right? And he uses that wherever he's going, right? For whatever transactions that he's doing, right? That's the paperwork side, right? Of this, and that's still the active side. That's still the civic side, because filing affidavits, going to the court to file stuff, that's activity. That's not sitting down in the temple, pray, go home, and then you don't care about Noble Jawali until the next day you go to the temple, right? The other level, there's one of the teachers, the master teachers, Taj Tariq Bey, right? Now, he doesn't deal with the paperwork side not because he doesn't want to, but other things work with different people. So his perspective now is that, well, he has a nationality card, right? And his nationality card is what he uses for ID, what he uses for passport, what he uses for tax exempt, what he uses for, anything dealing with who he is, show me ID, what's your identity or whatever. That's what he uses.
So what do you mean by his national card? What is it?
When you join the temple, you get one of those, right? And remember that is just a brief of where you are mentally, right? That plastic isn't doing anything for you, right? That's just a brief of where you are, just like the paperwork is just a brief of where you are mentally, right? So so the brother has those, and then there's other Moors that have similar similar identifications and stuff like that, and then that's what they use, right? But different jurisdictions, different things apply, because the whole fraud of getting you to agree that you're Negro, Black, colored people was done by creating a jurisdiction and putting you in it, right? Through words, not through physically picking you up and putting you in it, right? So when you change the words that you use, right?
So this, you use this to travel?
No, I don't use that to travel. I have a passport.
Oh.
I have a Canadian passport,
Oh,
but my Canadian passport has, I wear my fez on there, and I reserve my rights when I sign it.
So, the name Tarsha?
Yeah.
Is it in your passport?
No.
Your other name?
Yeah, the other name, the slave name. Yeah.
Your birth name.
Yeah.
Is in your passport.
Right. But anytime, and this is probably something to put down in your notes. Anytime you have to use the name that's your birth name, right? The documents that are attached to that name are more than likely going to be in all capital letters.
When you use birth name,
when you use your birth name, the name that you're born with, any documents that are connected to that name, social, driver's license, health card, credit card, bank card, etc., the name is going to be written in all capital letters, because that's a corporation. So the corporation government wants you to think that you're the name on those documents, when that's not really you. Because, we learned that, in grammar, right, you capitalize.
Just the first one.
All right. So that's how it should be written on everything.
Lowercase to the end.
Exactly. And it's not written like that. So that doesn't identify you, right? So anytime you sign anything with these people that we're going to call the immigrants, the aliens, the foreigners, right, that are pretending to be government, or pretending to be a corporation, or pretending to be an organization that wants you to sign a paper because they want you to benefit from something, or they want to give you something, or whatever, before you sign on the line, you're going to write, or it'll be better if you get yourself a stamp. Just go to Staples and make a stamp that says this on it: all rights reserved, UCC 1-103. It's okay.
UCC
1-103. UCC again 1-308. Without prejudice.
Without prejudice.
Yeah.
I want those numbers that.
So you can, because man knows not by being told. So you can just go Google UCC 1-103. It'll tell you what that is. And UCC 1-0 tell you what that is. You Google all rights reserved, it'll tell you what that is. Google without prejudice, it'll tell you what that is. Right?
So this is before you sign your name?
So on the line that you're gonna sign on, it'll be good if you have a stamp. So you just stamp it, and then you sign over the stamp.
Over the stamp.
Right?
So I stamp it here.
You stamp and you sign it,
and then I sign on top over
the stamp. Over the stamp,
in the word.
Yeah, like in it, yeah.
Just like I do at work. Okay, see, my name is here, and I just sign up here like that.
Right.
Okay.
Right. But you would sign over
the stamp. You
stamp, or sign, or write all rights reserved, and sign over the all rights reserved. But write the all rights reserved so it's legible.
Yes.
But also adjust your signature so that it's legible with the writing underneath it.
Okay.
Right?
Yesterday we watched that.
Yeah.
So just sign it into all
right.
that thing.
Right.
So that's what he's saying.
Right.
Sign into
it.
the stamp.
Right. Because what happens is that when you sign without putting anything there and you just sign with your signature, somebody could lift that signature and put it on other stuff and then send it to China and sell it and call it a mortgage.
That's true.
It's true.
That's true.
Right? So you're just doing that because
To
right
protect
now,
myself.
right, you're doing that to protect yourself, right? Because your true self is the more.
Yeah.
So you have to protect your true self because your true self is being used as a human resource
Mhm.
with these private corporations who are bankrupt.
I'm just
Right.
gonna ask that question. Say like for work situation, documents like signing for work.
Yeah.
Would this
That
Alright.
you're signing for work, like you're signing because you
No,
work there,
on her
or
behalf. No, she's signing her name to documents.
you're signing into documents at work.
not for the work, not for
Herself.
not for the company, for myself, pertaining to me.
Yeah,
This could do as well.
yeah, you're just doing it just to, I mean,
Protect my
if you
my rights.
right, if you do it right, and somebody says, well, you shouldn't be doing that because I can't see your signature, or you can't do that, or whatever, that lets you know that they're not for rights.
Right.
That lets you know that they're all about violating people's rights.
Yes. This is why I'm
If they wouldn't let you reserve your rights.
This is why I'm
Right.
asking, because I have to sign some important documents soon,
Yeah,
which you're gonna put into me.
yeah.
And
If because remember let's put it in an example like it's court, right? Let's put it in an example like it's court, right? You go to court, right? And they say, Miss Johnson, please come to the front. And you come to the front. They say, could you state your name for the record? And you say your name. Okay. In your mind, your name is capitalized.
Okay.
On the paper, it's written in all caps.
Yes.
And you don't know that it's written in all caps on the paper.
Right.
So you think that they're talking about you, so you're answering questions and you're engaging them and you're trying to work out a deal when
It's not me.
that's not you, right?
Okay.
But they have you think that it's you because everything that you have says it in all capital letters, and you just figure that, well, all the keys on the keyboard are all capital letters, so I guess that's just how, they just made it convenient, and that's just how they do it when they're deliberately doing that to steal your birthright. Right. And you always wondering why they did that is the spirit calling you to this, because average people aren't gonna wonder about why is my stuff in all capital letters, right? But if you were good in grammar and 8 parts of speech and all that type of stuff, this is gonna click with you right away, immediately.
I've seen it when I say, why they type the full name, but we just kind of dismiss it. You don't go any further with it. But it's not
And that's
right.
what they want you to do.
It's not right.
That's what they want you to do, because once you dismiss it, right?
So
you abandon.
Yeah. So this, when I go to get this, I have to have it in the proper form of typing, no capital, just the first letter of each word.
Well, that doesn't matter, because that's not name, person, place, or thing.
Oh, okay, so it
right?
can be in
So
capital,
it could be whatever, right?
Okay.
It would be more effective just having everything in all caps, right? Because all caps,
Jump out there.
right?
It's like that word, this girl, she typed something and she typed it in all caps, and the manager said she's shouting.
Yeah.
She's
right?
shouting and
yeah.
she's shouting.
And this is no, and this is no, and this is where right, and this is where people's mentality is, right? That happened to me a couple of days ago. Same thing online. Put something in all caps. So why are you shouting?
Yeah,
he's shouting.
What do you mean? Why am I shouting?
That's how they say it on the thing.
And
also the cell phone.
What do you mean?
Yeah.
You heard me just now? You heard my letters? Right? And then when you tell them, well, no, I did it for emphasis, they say, no, I mean shouting.
That's what it is in the new
Okay.
meaning of technology
Right.
today.
But right. So but what's that doing now? That's creating a whole new program now. We're not we haven't even figured out the first program that we put on there.
I know.
Yeah.
And we're going into a new program of language.
Yeah.
We don't even know the language that we're speaking.
Yeah.
We're calling ourselves black when we're brown people,
Yeah.
and now we're talking about, you're gonna go. Who knows what LOL means to a German person?
Yeah.
LOL could mean anything to a German person.
It's a program. That's the beautiful thing about having this knowledge now is that I'm at work. I'm reflecting now what's going on with work with my life. See, it's like the things that I do now are giving me clues as to how life should proceed or what's happening. Yeah, there's insight now on things that I would never saw.
Yep.
Things are happening.
So some of these papers gonna be government papers, so this will be So what did you watch last night? Was it?
I'll give you that one.
Oh,
We watched
Is that
last.
online?
This one's that actual list.
Right. We got about 50 minutes. I don't know if you guys had any questions. Things you might have heard, or just things going on out there that you just might be questioning.
Oh. When you're talking about that all right reserve, when you get a speeding ticket, how do you handle it? When you have to choose an option and sign.
First thing is that wasn't a ticket that they gave you. That was a suit. A suit. Yeah, they're suing you.
They're suing you.
They sued you for violating a contract.
Right.
So there's a fee attached to it.
But I didn't make no contract with them.
Right? The driver's license. Because anything that you sign is a contract. But the contract's void if, the laws of a contract are not expressed in the contract. So one of the laws in a contract is that, it has to be, all the parties have to sign it. Most people sign your license. So, it's a fraud contract.
So
but they're not going to tell you. But then you're going to ask yourself.
I don't even know what it is.
But then ask who issued it. Did an individual issue it, or did a private corporation issue it?
But she said if the ministry signed it.
Right?
No, I know the ministry don't sign it.
I don't know. I don't remember.
They don't sign it. They sign the application when you
I think there's a signature somewhere. That's my signature. No, they don't sign anything.
Right. So that's a fraudulent contract. So that thing called the license, right, is okay. Put this down. Go online and you'll find online law dictionary. Right.
Yeah.
Online law dictionary and look up license. And then look up application. And then look up registration. And then see if those things mean at law what you thought they really meant.
Yeah, but if they're gonna fine me, how do I get out of paying the fine?
See, when I said, remember when I said, people are gonna get into this and then they're gonna get damaged? Okay, so this is where what could happen, right? Let me show you what could happen. So, let's just say I was, a negligent head, and you came to me and said that, right? And I said, oh yeah, you know what? Okay, well, here's what you do. You're gonna write this letter to the court, right? And you're gonna put your status on the record to let them know where your position is, right? And then when you go in there, they're going to call you up. You're going to go in there and you're going to say, you know, you're going to object for the record. You're going to say that you can't make any pleas because you didn't receive the disclosure, and that you need the disclosure in order to build the case that these people have, right? But remember, in order to get the disclosure, you're going to have to admit that you're that all capital letters, because that's the name that's on the docket, right? And even though you sent in something to them saying who you are, what I didn't tell you is that that place that you're going into isn't a court. That's an administrative building. So they don't deal with the law in there. So what they're going to do is they're going to say, okay, well, if you don't want to be Jane Smith because your name is Jane L, because you're a Moor now, and you're telling us that you're a Moor, then you need to get out of this courtroom because this matter doesn't concern you. And you, ignorant to the protocol of the court, are going to think that, okay, that's a win. So you leave, but then they continue with the court hearing.
Behind.
After you leave.
After I leave.
Yeah, after you leave.
Continue with her hearing.
Yeah.
After I leave.
Because remember, she said that she's not that name.
I'm not that name.
So who's gonna represent in her place?
No, nobody. Because that thing on the paper is a thing. It's not a person. But because they're the ones that created it, they're the ones that have jurisdiction over it. So now they say that you weren't at your court hearing, and then they issue a bench warrant, and then they come kidnap you.
Right.
Right? And then you're going to be kidnapped and sitting in some cell because you didn't, just want to accept the responsibility that you ran the red light and you should just pay the ticket. Or you were going 40, in a walking zone. So, right? Until you get to the stage where you're comfortable with this, that you go in there yourself. You don't even need to come talk to anybody because you've studied, and because you've studied, and when we say that you've studied, we don't mean that you watch a YouTube video or that you watch the DVD. We mean that you have books like how it looks right here, and you have law dictionaries, and you have etymology dictionaries, and you have unabridged dictionaries, and you have the ticket in front of you, and you're gonna look up everything that you don't know on that ticket or that suit, right? You're gonna use it as your practice to start getting yourself familiar with this thing called driver's license fraud, because now that the contract it's fraud because only you signed it.
Yep.
So that's why we say driver's license fraud. And then there's citizenship fraud. Then there's healthcare fraud and social insurance fraud and all these things that they're doing, right? Under the guise of government.
Yep.
When they are private, foreign, European corporations, and the only reason that they're here is because we agreed to be Negro, Black, colored people. And once we agreed to be Negro, Black, colored people, then we didn't agree to be Moors. And once we didn't agree to be Moors, then they can pick up that sovereignty and pretend to be us. That's why every president, whatever, right, head of any organization is a Mason. A Mason. Right. Right. Yeah. They belong to that. But they do that in secret. So they don't do this in the public like how I am.
So like George Bush is a Mason. Isn't Obama a Freemason too?
All of them are part of some fraternity. Right? Which fraternities aren't nothing wrong with them. You know, they have a purpose,
Oh, I know.
right? They have a purpose, right? So this was I trust that, you know, this was a good first session for you. And you know, I see like there's pages there, so you got some notes and stuff. You have some stuff to go check out. You know, we teach also too that you don't, if let's just say with the ticket thing, right? That whatever you did, and then I told you what to do, and then it worked. Let's just say, right? Your position now isn't to take that knowledge that you've now acquired and hoard it, right? And abuse it,
share it.
right?
No.
Right? The objective is to tell somebody who doesn't know, because that's why we're even in this situation, because nobody told anybody that didn't know. People who had these feathers on played the game like this is religious. Nobody draw leaves your prophet. You have holy book. You come pray and sing hymns and all that type of stuff. When that's not what this is about. Yes, that is an aspect of this, but that aspect of this is only for those people who are passive and they don't have the courage to stand up, right? Just like Noble Drew Ali said in the article, right? That, you know, you don't be a coward with this, right? You must not be a coward and deny yourself personal rights that belong to every man. If you deny yourself personal rights that belong to every man, you're a coward.
The more he says Noble
Drew Ali.
I know, the more it's coming to my head. Yeah.
No, the more I think I hear that name before,
Probably.
but not from this perspective.
Right.
Like that same guy that I was talking about at work, talking about born people. I'm pretty sure I've heard him say this word before.
For real.
I'm pretty sure I heard.
So just test and see.
No, he wasn't talking to me, but I was in the area, right?
Yeah.
And I'm pretty sure I heard that name at work. It's bugging my head now. I know I heard it somewhere before. Every time he says it, it comes back to me.
Well, see, that's the thing with the power of the prophet, right? That, you know, if you're sincere, you know, if you're sincere with this, right? If you really stop and recognize that for the past how many ever years you've been alive until you found out about Noble Drew Ali, that you've been walking into a wall of hypocrisy from every single angle that is considered your liberation, right? And the wall of hypocrisy is because nobody ever once said, oh yeah, you know, just check out what Noble Drew Ali said. They kept that quiet. They kept that on the hush. And when things are kept on the hush, that's because people took an oath not to reveal something. And if you're taking an oath not to reveal the liberation of your people, then you're one of those heads that's going to be taken off first when King Alfred's land drops. Because they're not playing around. You know, and we have to stop playing around. You know, that's why you know, we had to cite this guy, because I know he was waiting for the rebuttal. You know, what are they gonna say about that stuff? So I could come back and then show them that they're wrong. Yeah, we're not even getting into those crazy ones. No need, because we know his position. Like, we know their position. They've been doing Moore's work for years, so it's not like we don't know who they are. But they've put their position on the record already. So there's nothing for me to. I know where your situation is, right? You know, it would be wise for them to get on the civic stuff. You know, just because that's also a part of the movement. it's not just solely religious. You know, there's things in here that he said that was right. You know, but it's not anything to discuss or debate. You know, so we're gonna close out there. It's 9 o'clock. Thank y'all for coming. Islam Moors, give thanks for being on the tube. I know we had a limited number of viewers today, but you know how we do. The work continues. 5 on the left, 2 on the right. Islam Moors, and have a good one.